Salome,
Hi.
how you doing?
Very good. Very excited to be here with you talking in my
Likewise.
home. Welcome to my home.
Yes, in a different spot from last time we filmed,
Yeah. Mhm.
but I figured this is more comfortable.
Yes, it is.
So, for people who may not be familiar with you, and that's their loss, why don't you tell us more about yourself? Who are you?
Yeah, my pleasure. So I'm Salome Sibonex. I'm a writer, I'm an artist, and I'm also the founder of the publication The Black Sheep,
Mhm.
which is a Substack publication dedicated to individualism and highlighting these black sheep stories of people that have defected from groups that were becoming tyrannical or oppressive or just dysfunctional, and being that kind of whistleblower or willing to walk away from something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's about it. I can go on and on with the introductions, and I never feel like I get them right, but, like, that'll do.
That's fine. That's fine for now. We'll learn more about you.
Yes.
What do we have?
We have sushi yet again. Like I
Yes.
was telling you, I just figured, you know what? Let's not reinvent the wheel. This sushi is great from this place that I got. I like I said, I'm a sucker for a fried roll with cream cheese.
Mhm.
Everybody's gonna either love me or hate me for that comment, but this sushi is very good.
And what kind of tea is this again?
So I've made you matcha green tea, which is one of my favorite teas. It's got this really subtle, like toasted rice flavor, a little bit of a nutty flavor. And it's not everybody's preference, but I just love how subtle and warm the flavor is.
Mm. Well, so far the sushi's good.
I love the sushi.
So, what made you start Black Sheep?
Hmm. My own story, my own black sheep journey. So when I was younger, I was a leftist, like a lot of people are now. I thought that that was the way to solve society's problems. I looked at the world. I saw poverty. I saw unfairness. I saw starvation, violence, war, injustice, all these terrible things.
Mhm.
And like many young people, my first instinct was, why do we live in a country with a government that doesn't do anything about that?
Right.
Why doesn't the government fix this? Why don't we give homeless people houses? Why don't we give poor people money? Why don't we give hungry people food? Um, and it took some time for me to eventually realize it ain't that simple.
Mhm.
And that is what maturity is. Really, it's going from naivety to maturity, which is this looks very simple. And then realizing it's never that simple. There's always a cost benefit analysis that needs to be done. And so when I was a leftist, partly I was kind of pushed into that because it was just what everybody around me was doing, also. I had no examples of other political belief systems that cared about the things that I cared about or seemed to resonate with me. It was either you're a leftist and you care about other people, or you're a stuffy conservative and you don't care about anybody. And I was just like, well, yeah, that doesn't seem right for me. So I guess I'm going to be a leftist. And the more I got into that subculture, the more I started to get wrapped up in these really toxic emotional dynamics. And so, we've seen that spill out into the common square now, I guess, like cancel culture, things like that.
Mhm.
That was brewing on Tumblr back in the early days. I mean, pre 2012, pre Trump. I remember seeing people being canceled and people being harassed and insulted online for their opinions. And it was the first time I was ever seeing anything like that. And I was in these subcultures online, and I was a person who felt like I care about other people. I
Mhm.
want to do things that are good for the world. I'm confused also. I don't know what my future is. I don't know what I really want to do with my life. I feel frustrated. I feel lost in how to get this sense of agency that I can actually make a change in my life and the world.
Mhm.
So these politics and these like online subcultures were a great escape, and they felt comforting. It felt like it was very clear all I have to do is play by these rules say these things and I fit in, I get praised, and most importantly, I don't get attacked. I don't get piled on like I'm seeing all these other people get piled on. I don't want to become that person. And so that pushed me to become more attached to these ideas. And eventually, I started to just realize my life isn't getting better. I still feel confused. I still don't have money. I still don't know what I'm doing, you know? And it really just felt like I was starting to see the difference in the people who claim to care about other people and then what actually happens when these ideas get put into play. So for me, that was the BLM protests and riots during 2020. That was probably the catalyst, like the big push for me to start distancing myself from leftism. Because I saw people making these arguments for terrible behavior, for mob violence, for private property destruction, just destruction and chaos in general, looting, things like that. You know, you might remember there was a book that NPR was pushing around that time called, what was it? In favor of looting or something. You remember it was something like that. It was like looting is retributive justice or something like this, basically. And I remember being like, that is so infantilizing. That is so condescending. Yeah. You would never tell your own child, go ahead, go break into a store and loot it because that's retributive justice. I'd be like,
that candy bar?
Yeah, right. Like that's going to be your winner's position in life. Just go out, destroy things, do whatever you want, and justify it after the fact with some fancy lingo.
Right.
And so I saw that and I was like, you gotta know that's not helping anyone. I just don't feel like this is honest, that you really think that destroying property and just angrily marching through the streets and, you know, getting into these situations where violence is erupting, how does this help anyone? And so I said that. I said it on Twitter. And I was so sure that I was going to get backlash, that I was going to get piled on. But it was just this catalyst of a moment where I thought, I can't pretend that this is okay anymore. I can't go along with this. I feel like I'm going to be complicit in something really harmful if I just sit back and don't say what I think when I really don't see anyone else saying that this is wrong. And so I felt that responsibility. And so I did it. And it actually paid off. And that was kind of the first moment that I started, without knowing the concept yet, really living out this black sheep pattern, that a person is pulled away from the common behavior of the group that they feel a part of and pressured by that group to not criticize it, to not question it, to just go along or just be quiet. But something else pulls them more strongly. And because of that, they take that step on their own away from the group. And what I found is that for most people that live out that black sheep pattern, they find something better because of it. So they're in that group and they're thinking, this is all I have. If I leave, you know, leftism, who am I? What do I become? Right. And if they take that step, though, if they're convicted by something higher, which is just can be, I can't lie. I feel like I'm inauthentic and I don't even like the people that I'm surrounding myself with. Even just that, taking that step and moving away starts to reveal a better path. And that's what happened for me. So I started from there on kind of sharing more of my thoughts online and writing. I started a newsletter. And that was before Black Sheep. But I started a newsletter. I was writing online. And I started to connect with other people who thought like me. I had people sending me messages saying, I was afraid to say this, but this is exactly what I thought. I'm so glad you said it. And I would keep getting that. And I just realized, oh, wow, everybody is sometimes looking for someone else to say it before they say it. Right. So it's so often that it's not that you're the only one. It's that no one has said it yet.
Right.
And so that's the beauty of that black sheep pattern is that you're just the first one. You don't realize that once you take that step away, you may find other people that have also taken that step away, or some people that are in the herd just thinking, no one else is leaving the herd. So where would I go? They see you leave and then they think, oh, that's possible. I can leave. There's another path here. So that really became a fascinating thing for me that I've continued to look into. Just groupthink, the destructive impulse of collectivism, the importance of individualism,
Mhm.
and what happens when we lose that balance between the importance of the individual and having the collective just become everything, which is if you question, that doesn't matter. You're getting in the way of the greater good, so get out of the way.
Right. Yeah. So would you say that before 2020, you weren't really a black sheep, like in life? Let's just say in life,
Right.
you kind of just went along with whatever the mood was in the particular moment.
The interesting thing about that is that I think black sheep tend to be black sheep from birth.
Yeah.
I think they don't realize it. And so I have dealt with people pleasing for a lot of my life. Um, I kind of have a theory that it's linked back to my mom's time in communist Cuba. She was born and raised there for much of her life and then fled, and I was born in Miami. And, you know, it's a really strange thing. I've been to Cuba, and there is a culture of not saying what you think
Mm.
because there's penalties for that,
Right.
actual
There's repercussions.
state-based
Yeah.
penalties, yes. There is very much a culture of you can't trust your neighbor. You can't even trust your family because your cousin could be the one that tells someone, "I heard he was talking bad about the government. I
Right.
heard that he's not actually a communist." And if that gets to the wrong place, you're in big trouble. And so there is this ethos of not doing things for your good, not doing things that you believe in, but double speak, which is, "Oh, yes, we love this new program. Oh, yes, we love these ideas." And then behind closed doors with people that you can absolutely trust being like, "This is really bad.
Mhm.
This is not working. I don't think I believe in this."
Right.
So that kind of culture of double speak, I really think that it impacted my mom, and I think that she had that kind of impulse to really be concerned about whether she was being perceived well, whether she was going to get in trouble, and be careful about what she would say and what she would do. And so,
Mhm.
of course, like that kind of got embedded into me as well. And so I grew up with this sense of like, it's really important for other people to be pleased with me. It's really important for other people to like me. Um, if other people don't like me, something's wrong with me. I don't know how to be okay with myself if other people don't like me.
Right.
And, you know, it sounds so simple, and I think sometimes we forget how simple human problems are. But, like, that is a big problem, and I think it drives a lot of the problems in our culture now is that people don't feel, that individualist ethos that what is good for me is okay. It's
Right.
okay for me to care about myself and to not constantly put other people ahead of me and to judge my worth by how other people judge my worth. And so, while I had this battle since I was young to kind of find my voice and develop my autonomy and start gaining a belief system that let me care about something more than just am I being approved of by other people.
Mhm.
Um, I always felt like I was looking for something, like I was not getting it. You know, like there was something about like the way other people did stuff that I didn't get, or that I was needing to kind of change myself to fit in. And I think there's something interesting about that contradiction between being really hyper individualistic and having that kind of like super individualist path that no one else is really going to take. You know, it's your life path, it's unique to you. And you just have to embrace that there's not a map for you that you can just be like, oh, all I have to do is go to point A, B, C, and just that's it. That's my life.
Right.
It's like maybe your life is gonna be different from others. And you can't just look around you for a map and say, oh, well, I need to do it that way. or I should do what they're doing. Maybe that's not going to be for you and your life is going to be completely different.
Yeah.
And so it takes courage to do that. And I think that's something I needed to develop before I could start doing that. But I feel like that impulse to live a very self-owned life, a life that I directed, a path that really does not resemble anything that the people around me or many people that I know follow. I think that was always in me. So that kind
Mm,
of black sheep need to go my own way was kind of hidden beneath the people pleasing and the insecurity.
I got you. Yeah, the reason I asked is because in my circumstance, I've my earliest memories of were of being like a black sheep.
Mhm.
So whether it was, um, growing up, because I moved a lot, so there were periods of time where I was in majority white
Mhm.
neighborhoods and growing up around some black people who would say like you can't trust white people,
Mhm.
and but I'm like, but they're my friends, like they're nice to me, and I'm just a little kid. And
Mhm.
I'm like, but what about this black person who did this negative thing to us? Like, does that make sense for me to default trust this person?
Mhm.
Um, and just, you know, there's a lot of stereotypes that people want you to live up to.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong. Like if you want to live that way, then that's up to you. Um, but if you don't live up to the stereotype, then it becomes a problem for certain people. They don't like it,
Yes.
or they give you like shaming language. Even how I'm talking to you, the way I speak would be somebody, oh, he speaks white, right?
Mhm.
So there's always this challenge of, are you really black?
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean? And I ask people, who determines that? Who are these
Mhm.
people? Who are the gatekeepers of
Right.
blackness
Yeah,
who
yeah.
get to say, uh, yeah, you can do this, you can do that, but you
Right.
can't do this? It reminds me, my wife was in like this Facebook group with black women, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but she was asking about something, and she described that she liked it,
Mm.
but at the same time, she's like, "Do black people do this?"
Yeah.
And I just thought that was so strange. Like, you have to give from strangers the authorization that you, as a black woman, can do this thing that you
Mm.
actually like,
Mm.
you know. And it's this constant feeling like you have to get permission to be yourself.
Yes.
And for me, because my most of my life was kind of like that. Over a period of time, you just kind of get used to it.
Mhm.
And, you get the white Adam, you get the, you're not really this, you get the, and over a period of time, it just doesn't bother me anymore.
Mhm.
Like, so now when I start writing things that are counter political to what you might hear from other black commentators, then it's the coon and this and that.
Mhm.
And that stuff does not bother me
Mhm.
whatsoever. Like I've had my blackness challenged my entire life. You're not new.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, stranger on the screen who
Right.
called me a coon. Like,
Yeah, get
uh,
in line.
yeah, get in line. So I think for me, when I did have that shift in political spectrum, and I really started thinking for myself and not just going along with what the media says or
Mhm.
what everybody else is saying, and really just started to listen to everybody and decide for myself. That's when I became like really free. I was living that life elsewhere except for politics.
Mhm.
So like my views on race have always been the same. How I treat people has always been the same, but I just never fully incorporated that
Right.
into the political sphere. So once I started doing that, then of course you're going to piss people off, and
Mhm.
some people aren't going to like that you said, "Well, I got some questions about this." No, 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 you're not supposed to ask these
Right.
questions. Like George Floyd, that scenario, and asking like I get it, but like, did he take fentanyl?
Yeah. Would
Like,
be good to know. Like,
could,
let's get all the
could
details.
that have affected him? Like,
Mhm.
could he have complied?
Yeah.
Did that have something to do with his death?
Yeah.
Or how about this? Let's say Chauvin's this terrible person.
Mhm.
Is his situation, even if you take the most terrible interpretation of what happened, what does that have to do with me?
Mhm.
Right? Is that indicative of every single black
Yeah.
person and their potential experience? No. Like statistically, no. Logically, no. Like we
Right.
can go down the list. No. Um, and I remember, I remember it wasn't even necessarily about George Floyd, but I had posted something, and some woman said, like, keep that same energy when a cop does this to you. And I thought to myself, they wouldn't because I'm not a criminal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, they just wouldn't.
It was
That's
a
not a
different
thing.
situation.
But it's that kind of thing. You end up making some certain people upset.
Mhm.
And one thing about being a black sheep, and I wrote it in my piece for you.
Mhm.
One thing about being a black sheep is there's power in controlling the group, right? And there are people who literally say gatekeepers, right?
Yes.
And the black sheep threatens their power.
Mhm.
And so if you withstand the slander, you don't apologize. You don't say, well, I really should have said it this way.
Mhm.
If you don't and you stay true to yourself, then other people see that
Yeah.
and that threatens them. So they
Mhm.
do not like these people. So when you see like people who are black conservatives who speak up and say these particular
They
things,
get the worst.
they're clearly the
Yeah.
outlier
Yeah.
in commentary, at least, maybe not necessarily political thought. The other people just don't say how they feel,
Right.
but they're definitely the outlier in political commentary, and they get it the worst.
Yes.
So, but they get it the worst because they're the biggest threat,
Exactly.
and that's the thing that I understand. If I do say something that's counter narrative, they will come for me, and I
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because once you know what the game is,
Yeah.
you don't have to play it. And that was freeing for me, was when I realized, oh, this is a system.
Mhm.
This is a way to keep people in check. It is a mechanism of control. I don't have to play this game.
Right.
Boom, I'm free. That's it. Like your spells don't work on me anymore. Your tactics don't work on me anymore. So, I mean, I remember it was always things like the threat of being called a racist or a white supremacist, these absurd things that,
Mhm.
now I look back and I'm like, I know what I am. That's crazy. Like, are you going to call someone stuff like that over nothing, over being like, yeah, well, I don't think destroying property while rioting is good. You're a white supremacist. Well, my gosh, white supremacy, the definition has really expanded these days, I
Mhm.
guess. It's like these things that if you have that strong inner sense of being grounded in your own beliefs, you can just say, that's not right.
Mhm.
That doesn't work for me.
And
You can keep
often
that.
they want a reaction from you.
Yes.
So if you don't give it to them, like
Yes.
I don't know if I've gotten dragged on Twitter like one time,
That's
because I was talking shit about Howard Stern. This is during COVID when he was
so
being
funny. Yeah, he was
a
terrible.
maniac,
Yeah.
and I was getting dragged by like the leftists and
Mm.
stuff like that who saw me having a counter viewpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and I just hit mute.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Waste your time.
And I just said, I feel so good.
Yeah.
I just want
Yeah.
to rest my life. And they're saying their thing, and it's like closing the door behind you.
Yes.
And it's a clear door, and you could just see people go,
Yeah, they're just like
"Rah!"
fighting out
And
there.
you're like, I feel so good. It's pretty quiet in here,
Right.
and it's that this stuff doesn't bother you. It's once they see that it does bother you.
Yes.
That's
They
when
double down.
they double down. That's why you don't apologize. When
Right.
you should apologize. It's very it's bad to tell people not to ever apologize.
Yeah.
But don't apologize under threat,
Right.
right? Don't apologize to keep your job.
Yeah. And I also don't believe in apologizing to mobs,
Mhm.
to groups. That idea of like, oh, you've offended a group. I'm sorry, I can't even see you.
Right.
How can I offend someone I haven't even seen? Like, you need to really put forward what has been done here. What is the actual offense? You just don't like what I said?
Right.
Okay. I'm not sorry. That's not something that I would apologize for, just that we disagree and you don't like it. A lot of
Mhm.
the terms that are set here for you're doing harm and you need to apologize or you need to like capitulate to these angry people in some way. It's another system of control. It's another mechanism of collective control. And this is the way that I've started to analyze just about everything today is does this support the individual or does this support the collective at the expense of the individual?
Mm.
Because the thing is, there are just so many quotes also from Nietzsche, from Jung, all these great thinkers going back to the Greeks, and they'll tell you repeatedly the same thing. You will find madness in crowds, not so much in the individual. The
Right.
individual is usually more reasonable, usually makes sense, usually more rational, more willing to actually like hash out a problem. You can't reason with a crowd. You
Right.
can't you can't talk to a crowd. They are emotional, they tend to be irrational. This has been throughout history. You have like mobs that just run around and like burn random things because it's like, oh my gosh, the crops are not growing and we think it's their fault because they're witches. Ah, pitchforks. And it's like, this has happened throughout history where mobs go on these like collective rampages and they so often damage individuals in the process who are innocent.
Right.
So that mechanism plays out so much, especially now where we have social media, which is a collective medium. It's not like playing video games on your game system alone at home where you're not connected to other people. You're connected to other people. I mean, you really wouldn't use Twitter if it wasn't connected to other people. You know, you'd just write a diary.
Right.
So these are inherently collective mediums where we can connect to people. And that has allowed really destructive collective behavior. You know, these things like cancel culture, just absolute bullying. You know, I have people will come to things that I'm writing and just be like, you sound like a narcissist, or this is doing harm, like you're justifying abuse. I'm like, what are you talking about? And who are you?
Yeah.
You know, like it's an absurd idea. I very rarely ever go to someone else's real estate on the internet and start saying, you shouldn't be doing this. How dare you? Because it's like, let me just close the door. I'm on my thing. I have my space here. I don't need to go after other people and tell them how to be and how they're terrible and all this stuff. But that's because I don't need control over them. I don't
Yeah.
have that desire to control other people or to get rid of things that I don't like in that unproductive way of like, I'm just going to shout people down so they stop saying this thing. So
Yeah.
they don't say it, even though they might believe it. I'm not changing their mind. I'm just scaring them into silence. So all these kind of collective destructive behavior that I think has been normalized by social media. You know, these things of like that kind of mobbing, whatever, where it's like you tweet something and it's just an endless array of people being like, I hate you, you're terrible, you're stupid, you should suffer. And it's just like, how is this normal? How is this normal? How do you think that you are participating in a normal behavior? Where would you do that offline?
Yeah.
Because you'd be clocked real quick as a terrible person if you just went up to someone and started yelling at them. You know, like you would get in trouble for that. You might have some actual ramifications for that too.
Yeah.
Not the same online. People love to like go off, run their mouth, be real hostile, but you wouldn't do that offline.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's the power of being anonymous. You lack any sort of responsibility for what you're saying. Um, you know, social media is interesting.
I know it's so crazy. I swear it's like the root of so many problems. Also,
Yeah.
it amplifies things in a way that makes them very confused. But that's why I bring a psychological lens to everything.
Yeah. Same.
And yes, you do a great job of that. Like I know on your publication you write a lot about like I know we're all talking. I love the one that you did recently about the whatever podcast and how they'll have women who are like, I sleep with 6 guys on one day. What up? And you're like, I know this is crazy. You know, I know that we could look at it at this lens and be like, oh my God, modern feminism is ruining women. But it's also like psychologically what's going on here because this sounds like someone who has had serious trauma in their life and may have like sexual abuse in their life. And I read that article from you and I was like, yes, that's how you do it. That's how you get to the root of things instead of just being on this reactionary treadmill forever where it's just like new thing drops. I hate this. This is bad. Da, da, da. New thing drops. I hate that. It's that. It's bad. That's bad. And it's just like, what are we doing here? You know, are we actually trying to solve problems or are we just trying to show people that we know which are the right problems and we just yell at them?
That's it. There are more people who just want to complain. And I get it.
I get it.
I get you want to
There's
complain.
days, yeah.
But there's and it's not that everybody has to have some sort of solution.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have the solution for
Right.
everything. But I also don't like complaining all the time. Like, or if I'm going to talk about a problem, I don't want to say the exact same thing that everybody's saying,
Yes.
because then obviously, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Why is everybody saying the exact same thing?
Yeah.
And it's because it's curated, and someone in the herd started this dialogue. It reminds me of when and this is not to pick on Trump, but like when Trump announced that he was running for office
Mm-hmm.
again,
Yeah. Yeah.
this time around. Um, and I was like, all right, so what are the new things that he's going to
Mm-hmm.
advocate for? And I was listening to different clips of his speech after he just announced that he's running for presidency again. And one of the things that he said was, we need to lock up drug dealers.
Mm.
I'm sorry, lock up. Yes, we should obviously lock up drug dealers. We need to, he was talking about killing drug dealers.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a lot different than locking up.
It's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, he was saying death penalty
Oh wow.
for drug dealers. Now, some people might be like, well, who does he actually mean by the
Right.
drug? Is he talking
Yeah.
about the
Did
guy
they
in the
kill
corner?
someone? Yeah. Like,
Is it talking about somebody else? Is he talking about, the cartel?
Right.
Who's he talking about? But that's part of the problem.
yes.
He's not very clear. But on top of that, no, we should not be having the the death penalty for drug
Oh
dealers.
my
Like,
God.
that is a bad idea.
Yeah.
That can go wrong in so many different ways, no matter what you think.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was all the people who were like, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, we should do that. And I was like, where did that come from?
God.
I've never heard anybody.
Right.
I watch and I listen. Nobody's ever said that
Yeah.
as some sort of, we really should do this thing.
Right.
And he introduced this idea, and everybody's like, yeah, makes sense.
Right.
Makes sense. And I remember, like, are you guys serious? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I tweeted, I was like, this is a terrible idea. And I just like the reply after reply, like, yeah, we probably should do that. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And I was like, that's groupthink.
Yes.
And it was just like that.
Classic.
He made this proclamation of an idea that we should implement in America that we've never done before.
Yeah.
This is quite literally what happens in the Philippines.
Right.
Yet he says it like that, and you're like, yep,
Actually, yes.
yes, I've always felt this. Sure you did.
Right.
Never, no one's ever mentioned it before. Never has ever
Oof.
advocated for it before.
That's
So,
creepy to me.
it is very creepy. Watching groupthink
Yeah.
come out, and especially coming from a politician, which
Right.
Trump is a politician.
Yeah.
People like to say he's not a politician. He is. But it's watching you coming from any politician, not just
Yeah.
Trump. Someone makes some sort of declaration, and then everybody just falls in line. And I understand it, because I did it at times as well. But at some point, it didn't make sense anymore
Right.
to keep doing that. And it didn't make sense because it's like, well, there should be other options.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't make sense practically when you do certain things that they've been advocating for. I've talked about abortion, and it's one thing to be like, it's her choice, if that's what they want to do. But it's another thing to watch your girlfriend kill your baby. And it's like, I said her choice and she did it, and it feels different.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing where, is this really practical, or
Yeah.
is it lip service? Like sanctuary cities.
Right.
It sounds great. Sounds wonderful.
Until you live in one.
Yeah, until they send hundreds of thousands of people over there, you have to now take care of them.
Yeah, and how does it work?
How does it work? So,
But you have to think through things.
yeah.
That's the thing. There's something I looked into recently called motivated reasoning. And it's a psychological concept that basically says people often don't make their choices or adopt their beliefs based on pure logic and reason, but because they have already decided that that's the belief I want to have for some irrational, more emotional reason, which might be, or some kind of convenient reason, which is, I want to vote for Trump, so let me find a way to like this thing that he has put forth as a policy idea. Or I'm already a leftist. This is part of my identity. So let me find some way to justify this new idea that leftists are saying we have to believe in now to be leftists because it's convenient for me, as opposed to the hard work of saying, let's actually think this through. Let's actually think through if the trans stuff is a great example of like all of a sudden to be a good leftist, you have to say, yes, men can get pregnant. Yes, a trans woman is a biological woman, things like this. And you have these like really loud, crazy trans activist minorities that kind of like take over the conversation. When in reality, there's a lot of people who will call themselves leftists and say, no, I mean, like, I think a trans person can identify as what they want to call themselves, but that doesn't mean that I think they are literally the physical same as a biological woman. That's not true. And it's fine to be respectful of them
You
without.
sound just like a turf.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's just like, can we talk through it? Can we actually think through it? No, because then you are going to get piled on by the louder, less reasonable voices in the collective. And that's the really dangerous thing to me about collectivism. And particularly this kind of like destructive collectivism that puts the collective above the individual. Because then there's no stop guards. There's no like safeguards against, hey, actually, this is getting unhinged. And we're just being a collective for the sake of being a collective now, not because we actually have principles and ideas that we're collectively working together towards, but because we have to remain a collective. Well, if you're not actually even achieving anything with this collective, then what is the point of it? What is just to keep it being what it is? And I think that is what happens with a lot of these collective identities, like leftist or whatever it is, where people become attached to it, they gain some sense of identity from it, and then it doesn't matter if pigs fly, they will deny what they see with their own eyes to keep that collective identity. And it really, this is why I've spoken more about individualism and I write about that. And I have a publication dedicated to the importance of individualism and a culture that understands the importance of listening to that one voice that says, I don't think this is right. I don't think this is working. Instead of saying, shut up, you're stopping us from achieving our collective goals, we're going to squash you, which is what you get. Cancel culture, all those people that are like piling on someone, insulting them. All of that is just stop. Get out of the way. We're going to squash you because you're getting in the way of our goals. Right. And that is the worst of the worst because it doesn't only stop at verbal insults or trying to silence people. In history, collectivism gets real ugly. That's what you have when you have authoritarian regimes like communism, like fascism. It's we will sacrifice the individual for this collective goal. And so if you don't have that kind of safeguard, which is, no, I'm not going along with this. So you're going to have to figure out how to do it without being able to use me for that means, then what stops the collective when it gets out of control? Where are the brakes? And so I've more and more, tried to distinguish to people individualism and collectivism as the lenses to analyze things with. And I find one of the common misconceptions is, well, individualism means not working together with anyone and not helping other people, being greedy, and making it no collective action, basically, like no cooperation.
Right.
And this is one of these like fundamental misinterpretations that honestly is so wrong that it kind of just makes me think, where is this even coming from? We cooperate with each other individually, freely, all the time. We're doing that right now. We're collectively doing something towards a higher goal of creating a project, creating a video, and we're doing it willingly as willing cooperators. You didn't have to force me to do this. So the idea that you can't have collective action without collectivism, without that kind of force that pushes individuals to do things even when they don't want to, is just patently false. You look around you, go to the grocery store. How do you think all that food got there? All the people that are there, that are working at the grocery store, that are running the grocery store, that are buying from it. No one is there because they're being forced to do any of that. That's all collective action that is born out of individualism, free choice to cooperate.
Mm.
So, this is something that I think is just one of these myths in our culture that I don't know, I'm just fascinated by where these things come from. I hear this idea that it's like individualism is just greedy. It means you have contempt for the needs of others. It means you don't want to work together with people. All these things that it's just like, how do you think this country got built? Like it's one of the core ethos of the United States is that the individual is sacred,
Mhm.
that the individual has unalienable rights, that you as an individual yourself, you have the right to live a life that is free, that is that you're able to go after the things that you want, that it's not something you're given, as opposed to a lot of European governments where the idea is that you get your rights from the state. They give you these rights, which
Yeah.
is thus they can take them away. Here, the idea is the government will protect your rights, but you have them. You have those rights inherently. So, this idea that, oh, we can't build anything, we can't work together with an individualist ethos, I think people are confusing that with individuality. This idea, this kind of like hedonistic idea of like, I do whatever I want
Mhm.
and I only do things for my benefit and I don't care about anyone else and me, 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 me. And it's like, I'm an individualist. I spend the majority of my time creating things for other people, finding ways to help other people, making things that are useful for other people.
Mhm.
This idea that I would live in some kind of hedonistic echo chamber where all I'm thinking about is how do I feel today? What gender do I want today? Like this idea that that's what individualism is. I think it's so flawed that it makes me suspicious as to where it's come from.
Mm.
Where did we get this ethos that you can't do things collectively without someone forcing it to happen?
I don't know. I don't know where it came from. Um, but the thing that so there's a thing that I've noticed as far as certain people who claim to be individualists.
Mm.
Um, they're individuals when it's convenient.
Mm.
So I'll say this: there are certain people who claim to be colorblind,
Mhm.
right? And oh, I was like, "What is that
No,
coming from?"
yeah, it's the kitchen.
Oh, okay. I was like, "Why can't we go
Yeah,
next door?"
oops.
um, no, they'll claim to be individualists um, when it benefits them
Mhm.
in regards to group orientation.
Mm.
So they'll claim to be colorblind, right? And being colorblind is really like an individualist like viewpoint. You
Right.
treat people
As
based on
individuals.
as if they're individuals. However,
Mm.
if it's another group of people, then it might be different.
Mm.
So I've talked about it. The way I've said it is like I don't know if there's like really a term for it, but it's what makes sense to me: in group versus out group.
Yeah.
So if it's in group, you tend to have the best interpretation of the in group,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, if I saw a video of a crazy meth head white guy who's, running from the cops,
Mhm.
right? Well, if I'm also white and I see that, I see it as that's one crazy meth head white guy that's doing
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
But then if I see a black person doing the same thing,
Mhm.
that's what they do.
Mm.
So, but this might be
Mhm.
the same person who says color blindness is how we should live our life,
Mm.
right? So it's that mismatch
Yeah.
that we that certain people have trouble with because they struggle with the group orientation.
Yes.
And for me, I recognize that there's a financial and power component for making sure that people don't remain consistent with being
Mm.
individualists. There's a lot of especially places like Twitter, which is like
Mhm.
it's like breeding ground for nihilism.
Yeah.
And there's a breeding ground for people who are ideologically opposed to individualism.
Yeah.
They are collectivists, right?
Mhm.
They might be coming from the right wing perspective, but
Mhm.
they're collectivists.
Absolutely.
And what they do is they take an example or even 5 examples, right? And they say this collage of examples is why you need to become a collectivist.
Mhm.
So if you see these black people and they're doing criminal acts, it's
Yeah.
because that's in them,
Yeah.
right? This is what they do. And when you see stuff over and over happening, they say, and they use the term, see the pattern,
Yeah.
right? So they say stuff like this. And I believe what they're trying to do is radicalize people who wouldn't normally say this.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I think that is because I've talked to people, um, like one guy in particular, he's an older guy, but he said, thank you because I was starting to go in that direction.
Mm.
I was starting to, because he saw BLM and he sees
Yep.
these images of black people who are doing these particular things. And he was just thinking, like,
Yeah.
is this it?
Right.
You know? And he said, you're having me come back to reality and see like that's this particular
Right.
type of person
Mhm.
who's doing this a very particular thing. It is not all of us
Yeah.
who are doing it. Um, and I think there is an active fight to have people see the collective
Oh,
view.
for
And
sure.
it's not just coming from leftists, it's
Oh,
also
no.
coming from the like radical right wing.
Absolutely.
Some of them are influencers as
Yep.
well. Um, and I don't know if all of them are believers. I kind of think in the same way that leftists, where I think there are true believer leftists,
Mhm.
and I think there are well-meaning leftists
Right.
who think this is a good thing. I think it's the same thing coming from the political right.
Right.
I think there are pundits who think this is just reality. This is
Right.
truth. They like to hold. I'm
Mhm.
just saying the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
The truth is black people are criminals.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's the truth. And I'm just going to say
Oh.
it. 13% commit 50% of the violent crime. They
Oh
they
my
go
god.
on that tangent.
Yep.
Um, and then there are people who just get kind of um, there. Those are the true believers. But then there are the people who are just making money off of it,
Right.
right? Who are taking advantage
Absolutely.
of it, take advantage of the nihilism, um, and have fear spread amongst them. So like I recognize that component. That's why I think it's important to talk about bad ideas,
Yeah.
no matter where it comes from, because there
Mhm.
are a lot of bad ideas coming from all over the place. I left the Democratic Party because of bad
Mhm.
ideas, but I chose independence because I recognize bad ideas are all over the
Mhm.
place.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. For me personally, I think being an independent allows me to actually be independent,
Yeah.
rather than if I say Democrats are bad, I'm a Republican
Right.
now. And when I finally do raise my hand and say, "Excuse me, I don't know about this," they're like, you're not
Yeah,
running,
yeah,
or
yeah.
you're not running a conservative. Get
Oh,
out of
I
here, and
know.
then it becomes the whole group thing again.
Mhm.
Um, so like
Same thing.
being a radical independent is
Yeah,
easy
that's great.
because I have to tell people as an independent, I'm an independent.
Yeah, yeah.
Your party, what party? I'm an independent.
Mhm.
You know, I have to tell people this all the time, so
Gosh.
they can't use it against me.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, well, I'm not a Republican,
Yeah.
so why are you
Actually deal
upset?
with my argument. Yeah.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah,
that is such a fascinating thing. I've felt the same thing, which is just this this desire to, one, like you said, get people to view everything in terms of groups,
mhm,
and then two, to shoe how do you say, like, shoehorn you? What do people say? Pigeonhole you? Whatever,
yeah,
that, put you in a box
yeah, yeah.
where
Pigeonhole
it's
me.
like you're just a representative of that group. You're just this party or whatever it is. And they do it as a way to not have to deal with nuance, complexity, and like your actual argument.
Mhm,
And so that idea that that I'm an independent in that way, that it really provides you a lot of freedom because then you don't feel that need. Like there's this little push, right? That motivated reasoning of, well, let me try to see if this would make sense. Let
right.
me let me let me try to just go ahead and adopt this view because that's what my party is viewing, or that's what my politician is putting forth now, or my side, whatever it is. And I find that that is so restrictive. It flattens people, and it puts you on this kind of like pathway where you're just always pursuing what keeps you in the same place in a
Mm,
way, what keeps you believing the same thing and being like, oh, I, yes, I am this I'm a conservative, I am a left, I am whatever.
Mhm.
And that's so anti-growth to me, because what I would love is really for just us to all transcend these kind of political labels. And it's not like I'm saying, oh, we don't need to have a political system, but I would love if people would actually just engage with each other as individuals.
Yeah.
And we have this issue where when politicians try to run for office, you'll have people like libertarians or whatever that want to run and they run as Republicans, or that they run, RFK trying to run as a Democrat, even though he's very different from a lot of the normal Democratic policies. So he's kind of different in that way. But you put that label, and then people are immediately, so many people are just like, no, I don't vote for Republicans. No, I don't vote for Democrats. And it's like, but what about this person?
Mhm.
Have you even looked into this person's politics at all? Like, what are they putting forth? And I think that's such a great example. And that two-party system is the epitome of how, like, putting things into this rigid binary,
Yeah.
where it's like this or that, turns everything eventually into hyper polarized. And it actually traps you
Yeah.
because you can't go anywhere else.
That actually, I was talking to Stephen Kent about this. One of the issues, and he's absolutely right. One of the issues that happens, we'll just use Republicans as an example, but it happens with Democrats too. The question of what is a Republican, what is a Democrat, and everyone's interpretation is different.
Yeah.
So because their interpretations are different, their expectations are different.
Mm.
So from a winning standpoint, like if you're in politics, your goal is to win elections, right? So what wins, right? So that means your constituency. So what works in wherever you live. And what I've seen, and this has happened often, like we'll use California. In California, they tend to be a little bit more liberal, especially in certain areas. So, all right, if I'm a Republican who wants to win in California, I have to be a little bit liberal in my policies. Doesn't mean that I have no conservative viewpoints, but I can't be extreme, right? So my temperament has to be different, so on and so forth. But what they'll do is the party within the state will be like, a real conservative is MAGA. And they'll run the MAGA candidate who says Trump, 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 and that doesn't sell there.
Yeah.
Now, if this was rural South Carolina, that would
Great.
work.
Yeah.
Alabama, sure, that will work because that's the constituency that's there. They're more conservative. That works for them. But there's this fight where people don't understand that as much as Liz Cheney is not seen as very favorable, a lot of people like Liz Cheney in certain places. Same thing with Nikki Haley. People can't conceive that there might be people who like Nikki Haley, especially in comparison to Trump, because they see Nikki Haley as safer, right? Whether it's true or not is a different story, but they see her as safer. They see her as a moderate option. And that works for swing voters. That works for people who are willing. Maybe this is a D plus district, but maybe this type of person, I like them because they're not extreme.
Right.
They have some liberal. They reach across the aisle. I like that, and I'll vote for that Republican.
Right.
Right. But there's this shaming language that they use because they're a rhino. Right? You're not really a Republican because you're not the MAGA candidate. You don't wear the hat. You don't do all this other stuff. And what they end up doing is shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are people, like I have a friend who's probably going to run for office again in California. She says to me all the time, there are Democrats that are out here that would love to vote for a Republican if they could get one that they actually like, right? Which means a more moderate candidate. And what ends up happening is it's that fracture.
Yes.
Because they don't know how conservative to become. And right now, the MAGA movement, if you want to call it that, has a very large influence. And I get the appeal, and I understand the motto behind it. And it's not to shame them. If you like it, you like it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's that fight for the group. What does it mean to be a Republican? And right now, what it means to be a Republican overwhelmingly means to be MAGA, Trump in favor. And does that work everywhere? No,
Mhm.
but you can't. It's hard to tell people like, "Hey, I get it, MAGA, cool, but
Mhm.
we can't run it in Loudoun County.
Right.
Like it doesn't work.
Right.
We will lose if we do that.
Yeah.
So we need a Republican light, someone who's a little bit liberal,
Right.
someone who's not going to do campaign ads shooting guns, right? Because that
Mhm.
doesn't sell to soccer moms.
Yeah.
Like we have to find some sort of balance because that doesn't work here. So I just seen like even politically, people
Mm.
fighting for control over what it means to be a Republican, what it means to be a Democrat. I left the Democrats because I was like, this isn't the party that I
Right.
recognize because they're illiberal now.
Mhm.
They used to be liberal. I was fine with them.
Right.
They call them blue dog Democrats.
Mm.
You know, they were the Joe Biden and Obama marriages between a man and woman,
Yeah.
right? That was them. This
Yeah.
wasn't Republicans,
Yeah.
right? So like the party has changed and it's shifted. And maybe some shift is fine, but now I just see it as wholly leftist,
Yeah.
almost completely illiberal.
Right.
And the liberal ones, the moderates, keep their mouths
Yep.
shut. They're scared. They're scared of the mob,
Yeah.
right? But
And that's how you get that capture,
yeah,
where it's just like the loudest minority extremists on each side. And it's something that happens in so many different realms, not even just that kind of like Democrat versus Republican politics, but in any space where you have a collective that does not have that respect for the individual to go their own way or does not have that room for growth or movement but becomes rigid.
mhm.
And that's what I see in so many of these kind of like group dynamics where it's collectives that are so rigid, so attached to like the identity that they have, whether it's like this is what republicanism has to be, this is what leftism has to be, even libertarians. Like there is that
Oh
same
yeah, I've seen
there's a, you I know you must know
the.
they can be some of the worst where it's just like libertarian has to be like this and then you have everybody else outside of like libertarian politics being, well, what are these people talking about? Like they
Yeah.
don't even know. They don't even get outside of their own little like kind of squabbly echo chamber with each other.
All the
And
different caucuses where
mm,
they argue over the most minute
warring with each other.
detail, and I'm thinking to myself, you guys have no power. What does it matter?
What does it matter? Like y'all are fighting, and I think that's actually part of the dynamic there is because they're not winning, because there's that powerlessness, it's more attractive to do that kind of like drama, that inner fighting. And I wonder how much that just applies to many things. I see it, my experience is particularly with leftist collectives where I see there's this intense desire to just police language,
Mhm.
um, police like what is important to even focus on. The latest thing was like, are you posting about Gaza? Are you posting about Gaza? And it's just like, I'm sorry, I'm still studying the like 100-year history. Let me get back to you.
Right.
It's just this idea that what needs to be focused on, what needs to be talked about, should be dictated by some people who appoint themselves leaders of the collective. And it's so destructive, and it really reduces everything where you can't have your own expression of what does it mean to be liberal or leftist or Republican or conservative or libertarian for me.
Mhm.
Maybe this individual has a version of that political belief that's better than the more common way to approach it, or better than what you approach it as. Maybe they have some understanding of it that's actually insightful. But again, I just think that there's such a lack of desire for actually doing things and succeeding. And I wonder how much that is a facet of just our media culture. It's not even just social media. I think it's just increasingly media. I've been thinking lately about how much media has replaced culture.
Mhm.
Because before we had um, TV on all the time and 24 hours of news all the time, you had to spend a lot more time in your community
Yeah.
and with the people that were actually around you in your life. And that was where you got culture. That's where you got like, what do I care about? What's cool? What's the common belief on this? What's the narrative around this? You got it from the people around you, your community. And now people get all of that from the media. They get it from strangers. They get it from pundits on TV or from random people that they think, political pundits on social media. And I think that's a strange outsourcing of our belief systems and our culture really is that we're just a media culture as
Mhm.
opposed to being tied to something more personal, more real in the world, the people around us, and that gives you immunity from a lot of the really just kind of like extreme impulses that we see, like to rush as far as you can to like what is the most extreme example of or the most extreme belief that you can adopt. You see this kind of thing on social media, particularly where people are incentivized to continually get more and more intense in their rhetoric and more extreme because there's this need to kind of like stand out. And
Mhm.
so, as opposed to being reasonable, which is just like boring, whatever, if you have this super extreme rhetoric, like, whoa, that's different. And so, whether it's bad or good, you get attention for it.
Right.
And so I think there's this incentive to be like more unhinged because you know you see people things that they say online and it's like you would never say that at a dinner party. Like
Yeah.
people will be like, "What is your problem? Like, are you okay?" I think Pearl Davis, you know, that is a great example
Oh, man.
of someone that like is the perfect embodiment of algorithm incentives. You know, it's just like nobody actually is vibing with you. Even if they kind of agree, they're just on the same like algorithm treadmill of being extreme. And they're like, yeah, let me see if I can even one up you and be more extreme than you somehow.
Mhm.
And then the other people are just like, what? No, I'm mad about this. And thus I'm going to engage with it and make it more popular by being mad at it.
Right.
So it's just this weird rat's nest of messy incentives when in reality, if you were in real life and someone like Pearl came up and was like, I think society doesn't need women, you just be like, here's $1. Like, I hope you're, God bless. And you walk away and be
Well,
like,
that's why, like, and some people call her a grifter. Maybe she is. Um, but like, I've I watch people's mannerisms.
mm,
So like when she goes on TV, she goes on like Piers Morgan, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't think women should vote," but then she laughs right afterwards. Like to me, that's a tell. Like
yes.
some people say, "Oh, that might be a nervous laugh," but she does it every time she says it, right?
Mm,
And she's on TV
that's
all the
different.
time, so I don't think it's
Yeah.
nerves, right? This is the third time been on this show. You're not nervous
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
As someone who's done TV, you stop becoming that
That
nervous.
nervous. Yeah.
So it's like she doesn't really believe it, and she knows that it's shocking to say it,
Yes.
and she's not shocked when people respond the way that they do. But I don't think she truly believes that.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
she knows how to when people say, "What? Why do you think that?" She knows the response to
Mm-hmm.
it. But I think the perfect example of having your ideas challenged is when she went on trigonometry.
Mm.
And it's like, you are not familiar with trigonometry then.
Right. Yeah.
Because Constantine, he analyzes ideas.
hmm
And so he's always respectful. He's like, I hear what you're saying, but how does that work?
Right.
Or don't you think this? And she's not used to that,
Yeah. To actually talking it through.
right? To actually talk it through. And she looked uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like a perfect example of when you get the opportunity to ask people questions, not debate them.
Yeah.
I think debate is a waste of time,
Mm.
like 99% of the time. It's a
Mm-hmm.
waste of time because it's about appearing correct, not
Yeah.
actually being correct, or appearing to make sense, but not actually making sense.
Right.
It's the appearance of it. And if you stutter, I won,
I hate that so
you
much.
know,
Yeah.
so that it's a show.
Yeah.
It's not actually a battle of ideas.
Right.
It's who can express the idea
Yeah. Who
better,
seems like they're right.
who seems like they're right, who can say it with the most confidence.
Who talks the fastest. You see that all the
Right,
time. And I'm just like, I guess I lose no matter what, because I'm not going to talk that fast.
right. So you have different tactics. If you take too long to answer,
Right. That's it. You're not convincing. Yeah.
you look,
And it's like,
you
I'm
got
thinking.
owned. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to actually think about the
Right.
thing that you just
Like
said.
that should be something that makes me look good in this
Right,
case. That really shows you the incentives of debate are not always
right.
conducive to learning something.
No, they're not. That I think stuff like the times that I've changed my mind wasn't because someone was trying to change
Right.
my mind. That's not actually how you change people's
Yeah.
minds. You change their mind by presenting an idea and having them think about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm not telling you to think
Yeah.
about it. I'm just presenting an idea. And then they'll say, huh, I've never heard that
Right.
before. And then they think about it, and a few hours later, they're like, damn, maybe that makes sense. You know, that's how you change people's minds.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know?
They have to come to it themselves. The most mind changing I've done is with people that do exactly that, where I'm
Mhm.
just talking with them and I'm like, I get to ask them questions. 'Cause I'm like, well, what about this?
Mhm.
Then how would this work? And what about that? And they're like, well, this and then A, B, and C, and then X, Y, and Z. And it's like, oh, okay. As opposed to putting me in the defensive where it's like, well, you're wrong because of that, and you're wrong because of this. Because then it's like you just get people to shut down a lot.
Right.
But that's something that, again, going back to the communicative norms in online culture and social media, that is so absent.
Mhm.
It's just like there's no, if you really want to change people's minds, if you're so set on like, oh, the only way this world is going to improve is if I change everybody's mind to this belief that I have. Okay, great. Be effective. Like, stop just abusing people online or
Mhm.
insulting them or uh, trying to dogpile and shame them and scare them into submission. Just talk to them.
Yeah.
You could just actually just ask them questions, and that Socratic method of like, okay, but if that, then what about this? And if this, then what about that? And then you could just show a little bit of curiosity. Curiosity towards people's beliefs is just this superpower that it's very hard to show. I find for many people, it's not an option to them. It
Mhm.
doesn't occur like, what if I actually cared about why this person thinks what they do? What if I actually asked them,
Well,
why do you think that?
that's you meeting where people are,
Yes.
right? And you're not supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've talked to people. I've had very awkward conversations with people who are white about race,
Mm,
and it's awkward because they're not used to it.
yeah.
And I'm not trying to catch them and say, see, you said
Yep.
it wrong. I'm actually open to the conversation. And I understand where they're coming from because they're not used to it.
Right.
Right. It doesn't mean that they're hateful.
Right.
If they say it weird, if they use the wrong term,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's the intent behind what they're
Right.
saying? I'm trying to meet them where they are. I'm not trying to make excuses for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is where they are, and I'm trying to have a dialogue with them and have them think
Yeah.
about this particular thing. You brought up the collective part. It reminded me of an email I just got a few days ago because I wrote an article about Tiffany Henyard, the mayor of Dalton.
Oh, right.
The crazy one.
Oh my
Who's doing all sorts
God.
of stuff. No, yes, she's a Black female. So I checked my spam box, and some guy sent me an email. And in the email, the guy basically says, I disagree with your article, the one I wrote in the New York Post. I disagree with your article. I don't think this is about small town and people need to vote. I think that it's the problem where Black people will vote for anybody who's Black. And he went on to say, like, essentially, Black people are monolithic voting bloc.
Mm.
So I had said to him, if that was true, that this is an example that Black people would vote for anybody who is Black, do you understand that every person she ran against was Black?
I was just going to say, I bet there is a simple way to disprove that.
Right. And did you also understand that
That's
Dalton,
so funny,
which is a village of 20,000 people, is majority Black? The board of trustees, they're all Black. Everybody is Black there. So this is not the example.
Yeah.
to further the point, but when I run across people who say that, they say it because this is what everybody else says.
Mm-hmm.
This is the simplest answer, right? Why won't Black people vote Republican? It's because the Democrats gave them free stuff back when LBJ was around, and they just won't come back around.
Yeah.
And that's it. They gave them welfare, and then they're gone. And it's like,
That's
well,
so funny.
That's not exactly it. Right?
It's real simple.
It's real simple, right?
Yeah.
It's not exactly it. And when I point out that 60% of Black people live in 10 states, they live inside or in the surrounding urban areas or cities. And then you look at the voting demographics just in general. In most of those cities, Black people aren't the majority population. Well, when we watch the presidential election, what does it look like? Pennsylvania, red, 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 red. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, they lose the election.
Yeah.
Why? Because most people live in these
Yeah.
cities and the Republicans are nowhere to be found. They don't have a base within these cities. So if they're not even the majority population in, let's say, New York
Yeah.
City, and you guys lose New York, does
Yeah.
and then you look, are Republicans running in there? How do you vote for a party that doesn't
Right.
exist?
Exactly.
Right? You can't vote for a candidate that's not running under your political party. So yeah, they're going to vote. And then on top of that, it becomes cultural. Why? Because everybody lives in these areas where Republicans don't exist.
Yeah.
And mind you, for people who are listening, it's not like they just stopped existing. We're talking about cities like Chicago, who hasn't had a Republican
Yeah.
mayor since I think it was like 1900 something.
Wow.
New Orleans hasn't had a Republican mayor since the 1800s.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So you have all these different places. New York
Yeah.
City, actually, funny enough, is the one place where they had Bloomberg, who I think at
Yeah.
one point was a Republican, independent, and maybe Democrat all at the same time in his three runs there. But they had Giuliani famously
Yeah.
as a Republican mayor of New York City. So, but you have all these different places. In majority are not Republican footprints.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where they live. So,
You know,
I mean,
yeah.
maybe there's
Exactly.
another logical reason besides, we all got on the same conference call and said,
Yeah.
we're voting Democrat, right? Yeah. And there's a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
But these are, and I would bet you this person is one of those people who said we should treat people like individuals, right? Except for them, who are the out group.
Yeah.
They will never treat us like
Right.
individuals, right? They're one big voting block, and I like it's kind of silly. Like there are cultural overlaps, but there are logical reasons why certain things are happening.
Yeah.
Like we know that leftists are highly infused in our media, right? And they are obviously lean towards voting Democrat. But it doesn't mean that everybody who's a Democrat is a leftist.
Yeah.
Right? And so just like not every Black person supports BLM.
Yeah.
Or was out on the streets of the progressives. Actually, there's data that shows, there's one particular data point that shows only 3% of progressive activists were Black.
That's so fascinating. I'm not surprised.
The imagery that you saw,
right,
were these people who, by the way, were just opportunist criminals.
Yeah.
Who were looting, like civil
Yeah.
unrest. I'm coming in, like Kenosha. When civil arrest was happening, a lot of those people were from Chicago.
Yeah.
This is right there. So they were coming in from Chicago and creating havoc and stealing stuff. And
Yeah.
And so be it. Same thing in Minneapolis. So they were coming from different places and they were just opportunists.
Yeah.
But that image.
Yup.
Right.
That's that thing about, media culture is more and more, I think people are not, it's a weird thing. People's belief systems are being based on things that they don't actually see in their real life.
Right.
And and it's just like, that may be a bad idea. Like,
that's what it's like. Go outside. Do you go outside? Do you have a job? Do you talk to people? Because Twitter, let's use Twitter as an example, because Twitter is an amazing place.
It really is, yeah.
Like, Twitter is reality. People are like, Twitter's not real. It is a reality, but it's a slice of reality.
Yeah.
It is not the reality.
Right.
Right? You're supposed to take that and balance it with everything else. And so when you go on here and you see ridiculous stuff, but then you live your life
and you never see
it, like, what does that kind of tell you? That this person might be a bit off.
Right. Right.
Right. The sky maybe isn't falling. Like,
right.
Maybe things aren't great, but they're not like
this bad.
Like, our society is over. Like,
yeah.
I read that on a daily basis.
Every day. I've been reading that for years. I've been hearing that for years. That is one of the things that I think is important to understand, our negativity bias. That human inclination to be more captivated by the negative and to dismiss the positive. There's been research that shows, I believe, the impact of a positive versus a negative event. The negative, we can look at it as in terms of comments, right? You get a negative comment on your social media post, that is more likely to stick with you for longer than if you got a positive comment.
Right.
That's the negativity bias. And that is a human impulse that is part of our wiring. And so it's something we should be conscious of when we open up our phones and see all this negative stuff. Cause it's like, yeah, this feels really intense, but that's because I'm also wired to gravitate towards the negative more than I am to recognize I just went about my entire day. I went to work, I did my groceries, I went to the park, I took a walk, I went to the gym. Nothing crazy happened. Everybody was relatively nice. It was uneventful, which means it was good. That is good news.
Right.
Because if it's society's on fire, then society's not on fire. That's really good then. But we tend to just be like, oh, that's neutral. That's just nothing. It's like, what do you mean nothing? Like society functioning is not nothing or neutral. That's good. That's constructive. That's things working. But that negativity bias tends to have us gravitate towards when things go wrong and then just ignore when things are not going wrong.
Yeah.
And when we have a culture where so much of our understanding of what's going on is through screens as opposed to the actual real world around us, we don't even consume local news that much. I don't know about you, but most people my age and most people I know are not reading their local newspaper or not watching their local news stations or listening to their local news radios.
If they even exist.
If they even exist.
Yeah.
They're tuning into like national news shows or like big papers and things like that that are covering national stories and international things.
Right.
And so it's like that as a source for how we frame our worldview, something that's not even in our actual vicinity for the most part, just seems like it's fundamentally set up in a way that's going to skew how you look at the world.
Right.
And I wonder how much the future of humans, like the future for us to be successful requires, this has always been true, but it requires having an accurate perspective. As much as you can have an accurate perspective. And the more we let our perspectives be warped by the media that we consume, the less likely we are to thrive and be effective in the world.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I think this is exactly why I don't read all the comments.
Yeah, among many reasons.
Because I recognize that, like that email that I told you about.
Yeah.
The vast majority of my emails are positive, right? Thank you so much. Great article. Love what you had to say. The comments that I get, vast majority of them are positive. But I am not immune to that one idiotic comment that I see, and I have to respond, right? So I have to train myself to not even look.
Yep.
And not acknowledge. And if I accidentally look, I have to fight the impulse to respond.
Right.
Like
I
told someone that you have to understand when they say something like that, what they're trying to do is get you to respond.
Yeah.
When you respond, you give them the power.
Yep.
And that's what it's about for them. It's not about dialogue. It's not about good faith interactions. Not about any of that stuff. It's about, can I get Nicki Minaj to respond to me, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Nicki Minaj cursed me out. I made her angry.
Yes.
Right. I changed her emotional state.
Yes.
It's that kind of trolling aspect where they get like just a momentary power, but you get upset for an hour.
Yep.
Right, because of it. And it lingers in your head as you're driving home, right? You're thinking about it. So I try my best to see it as that and see it as, if I respond to this person, they now have my attention.
Yep.
And that's the power that they want. If I don't respond to them, then I upset them because I did not give them the power that that they wanted. So I kind of started, it sounds very leftist, like about, power dynamics, but I kind of started seeing it as a power dynamic to try and get me to shift my mood, to get me to respond a particular way. But I am also very low ego. So I have no desire, to prove to people that I am right.
Right.
And I might be wrong. So I'm not going to argue with you if it's just my opinion. All right, you don't agree with me.
Yeah. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. Like, I'm not going to engage in an hour-long back and forth.
Oh, I know.
And I see so many people who do that.
Can we talk about how insane that is? Because I see people doing that. They have like 200,000 followers, 300,000 followers, and they're like arguing with someone who has the gray, like, anonymous profile picture.
Right.
I've seen that and I'm like, someone needs to take your phone.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot tell me that that's the best thing that you can do with that time. Like, there is times to respond to people, of course, whatever. I tend to respond to comments, if I can, one, if they're good faith, you know, one, if it's
Right.
like someone that's like, well, look, I don't understand how this would work, or I have this view, so I don't really see how that works. You know, okay, great. Like, that's conducive to something positive coming out of it. That's productive. When it's people that are kind of just being antagonistic, if it's really in a way that I can use it so that other people can learn something from that interaction, where it's like, okay, I recently had a bunch of feminists pile on me. Oh, you saw one of the responses that I did,
Mhm.
where it was this very nasty little response of being like, it's okay that you're not a feminist. It's not for everybody. It takes a lot of reading, and there's just a lot of intelligence that's required to be a feminist. So it's okay if you
It's all right.
can't. And I was just like, oh, that's so sweet of you to call me an idiot that I'm not a feminist. Like, what a nice way to treat someone like garbage.
Hmm.
So I took that comment and I was just like, I'm going to break this down for other people to see. I'm not responding to you. I'm not going to come back and be like, it's not that I'm not smart. That's not why I'm not a feminist. It's not that I didn't do the reading. Like, no, I'm not taking the bait. Like,
Mhm.
I see the game here. What I am going to do is take this and be like, let me show other people the game. So here's how they're trying to manipulate me into responding and, you know, justifying that I'm smart enough or whatever. That's unproductive. Here's how this is a backhanded compliment that's like literal normal mean girl tactics of like, oh, it's okay that you're not smart enough to be a feminist, sweetie. Love
Mhm.
you anyway. You know, like this kind of like, you're obviously not on my side. You're not my friend. I don't even know who you are. Why are you talking to me with this like really faux friendly language when you are insulting me? Like, the insult is right in the sentence. So it's this kind of like sneaky language, this backhanded compliment type of thing. So I just broke those things down. So it's always for me like, how can I make this productive?
Right.
And that, what you said is, I'm not in my ego enough to need to go back and forth with people. That's not productive, right? That's when it's, I'm doing this, I'm using social media and I'm responding to people because I need to justify something. I need to get myself to feel good and like protect my ego and my pride. That's not really productive.
Mhm.
So if you can use it in a productive way, great. But otherwise, I'm just like, this internet is big enough for all of us. You can go over there and yell all day about what you want to yell about. You do not have to come here and yell at me because I'm on this corner of the internet talking about things that you don't like. That's crazy.
Yeah.
In some ways, I think that the internet is, social media in particular, is this really interesting, like, it's like the world in miniature or something. Because in reality, we live in our communities, right? And it's like we don't live with hundreds of millions of people.
Right.
Like, it's simply not possible. Like, we go about our communities, like in this neighborhood that I'm in, I don't know, there's probably like less than 50,000 people or something in the huge, you know, expansive part of it. Not all of DC, obviously, but the part that I'm usually in, I'm not always in all of DC. It's not like I'm running around the whole city every day, all over the place. Where I spend my normal life, there's not that many people around me.
Mhm.
And so, but when we get online, it's crazy because we're connected to the world. Millions and millions and millions of people can all see what you're writing. You know, I'll see tweets with impressions and it's like 7 million impressions. Like, when would you ever be seen by 7 million people? Especially from sitting at your couch doing this.
Right.
That's crazy. So there's this element that like the whole world is hanging out with us at the same time and we don't know how to act. Because if you put enough people in a room, things get a little tense sometimes. People need to know how to act.
Yeah.
If you put a bunch of strangers in the same room, things are going to get weird. You know, like, people will need to know how to act. We're basically taking most of the humanity that's connected to the internet and putting them all in the same room and being like, get along.
Yeah.
And they're not. You know, predictably they are not. So there's something about that it's like, you know, if you see that someone has one of those signs, it's like, in this house we believe water is water and we love love and be kind and I will let an illegal immigrant live in my bedroom if I want to. Like, you know, those like weird
Yeah.
be everything kind signs. If I see that, I don't go and like rip it out of the ground and knock on that person's door and say, I saw that you have a sign. That sign is bad because I'm like, that's their little slice of life.
Right.
I don't like that. I think that sign is silly, but I'm not gonna go yell at them about it in their home.
Right. You just roll your eyes and keep going.
Yeah, which is like, that's how I spend most of my time on the internet. I roll my eyes and keep going.
Right.
You know, because it's like, I don't know, you can choose to be a hater or you can choose to focus on what you actually care about. Like you said earlier, you know, am I just complaining? You know, am I just like repeating everything that everybody else is saying? Or am I bringing something new to this? And I think that's, you know, for people that even want to use the internet in a constructive way, like they want to build a following or a brand or whatever it is, don't do what everyone else is doing. Be constructive.
Yeah.
Don't just be a hater. You know, yeah, you can gain a following being a hater too, but like then everybody that's following you is a hater. It's
Right.
like you just built the worst audience ever.
I compare it to drugs.
Mm.
So I'm not gonna give any examples, but like let's say you know that in any political group that if you do this thing, you say this thing, you say it loud and proud, that boom, you're gonna build a following, right?
Yep.
And like you spend enough time on Twitter, I spend enough time on Twitter as well. Like you know what gets a certain reaction,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you say the certain thing, a whole bunch of people will respond to it and retweet it, and you'll get a lot of followers for saying it.
Yeah.
It could be something outlandish. It can be whatever. It can be a thing that just everybody within that group says, and they're like, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then everybody shares it, and you can build a quick, fast following. But that's like cocaine,
Yeah.
right? It is boom, just hits,
Yeah.
but you can't sustain being a cokehead,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you'll get burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
and you might die, you might
Yeah.
overdose. It's too much. But and then over a period of time, no one takes you seriously
Yeah.
because you're in the back alley sucking dick for coke,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
They're like, remember that guy who used to be real fun at the party?
Yeah.
He's out in the alley sucking dick for coke. Like you don't
That
take that guy
cracks me up.
seriously.
There really are personas on the internet that are the equivalent of that.
Right. And what ends up happening is over a period of time, that's how I know, and I know I will be right about this. There are certain personalities that are outlandish,
Mm-hmm.
say the thing, got big following, all this other stuff. In about 2-3 years, you won't hear from these people.
For sure.
Or they might be on there and they might have their sliver,
Yeah.
but the impact that they used to have, not anymore.
Yeah.
But then the people who keep it nice on the straight
Mm-hmm.
and narrow, what ends up happening? Okay, I don't have thousands of followers. I
Yeah.
have hundreds right now.
Yeah.
All right. But you know what? If I keep doing this, slowly people will follow me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's that gradual build. And then over a period of time, I'll be at where you're at, but I won't be high.
Yeah.
You know?
I won't be in the alley.
I won't be in the alley. You know, I won't be committing sexual favors to get
Right.
a following. I will be absolutely comfortable. And that's kind of been my strategy. My strategy has been I don't want to wear the MAGA hat.
Right.
Right? No shade. If you want to wear the MAGA hat, that's
Yeah.
your thing, but that's not my thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the thing that everybody wants me to say because I don't actually believe that.
Yeah.
Right? And I know if I say that, I know what will happen. I know I'll get this quick, fast following. I know if I fight with leftists, I know I will get a quick, fast following. I know if I do all of those things, but what ends up happening, it comes too fast
Yeah.
and it goes away quick too.
Yep.
And what I want to do is build something where I can sleep at night, where I feel comfortable with myself, and I don't say the thing. And if that means that I don't show up at this big conference and I'm not a keynote speaker, then so be it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm happy with where I'm at. And over a period of time, I'll have longevity. I'll be around longer than they will, right? Because that fad will be over. You can only do coke at that same rate for so long, right? And I'll be nice and clean and I'll sleep at night and I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And I'll be doing something productive and encouraging people to do other things that are productive. So I think the with me starting doing this in theoretically in 2020 when I started writing the book, but I would even say like 2021 when I became public and tried to do that. In less than 3 years, and look where what I've been able to
Yeah.
build and the opportunities I've been able to build. Why? Because I'm not an asshole.
Yeah.
Because I didn't take the cocaine. I didn't do the easy thing. I just did what felt comfortable and right for me. And I will continue to build a following from that and impact other people in a positive way because that's what I actually want to do.
Right.
And I see what you're doing and you're doing much of the same thing.
Mm.
And I think there's a reason why um, certain people, I don't even want to say like on the right, but like certain people who are alternate voices,
Mm.
let's just call it that, are attracted to each other,
Yeah.
right? Like you and I would willing to bet like we have very similar friends in that sphere, and there are people that we for sure do not talk to.
Yeah.
Same people, we do not talk to those
That's
people
so funny.
because
Yeah.
they're on the. And guess what? They all talk to each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we say back from those people. For me, I'll give most of them. I'm cordial with them.
Right.
I won't poke at them
Right. Right.
because some of them they're okay. I
Right.
just won't. I won't hang out with you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like you'll go to the party with your friend, but you can't babysit my kid.
Right.
We're
Right.
not that kind of friend.
Yeah.
But I think by me being cordial, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm generally a cordial person, working together with people, being something positive, like all these opportunities open up for me because I didn't try to pigeonhole myself
Yeah.
into being this supporter or this thing. No one can put me in the box.
Yeah.
And you get so much power from that because you defy what everybody is used to.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would be my advice to you is don't allow someone to try and put you in a box,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously you're not going to. But it's that box. It exists even amongst the people who talk about individualism.
Mm-hmm.
They still go back to the collective and they try to manufacture that collective thought when it's comfortable for them, when
Right.
it's convenient for them. I mean, we don't have to do that. I think we're more than capable of carving out our own path. And people like, and I said this before, people like Rob Henderson
Mm-hmm.
and Constantine Kissin have
Yeah.
shown success,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because before my view of success, I was like, man, how am I going to find success? Because I'm looking on stage. That's
Right.
what success is. I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
That looks terrible.
Mm.
But I see people like Constantine, and
Yeah.
I see where he came from, and I see how he was able to build.
Right.
And I'm like, and he's doing what he wants to do. Like he's
Yes.
talked about, I've turned down TV deals,
Right.
I've turned down these contracts because I have my own thing where I can do my own thing, and I don't have to be bound by some
Yeah.
corporate conglomerate. And they said, well, you shouldn't actually say that, Constantine.
Mm-hmm.
He has the freedom to say what he wants, and people support him. I'm like, I want that.
Yeah.
Rob Henderson, same thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's his job is to write, and he has a following. And he doesn't suck up to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say the thing that people want him to say. He talks about what he wants to talk about. So I think there's a lot of room for that. It's just that people, it's kind of like the black sheep thing.
Yeah.
They're waiting for other people to do it.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, that path, that's having integrity.
Yeah.
That's a thing. It's like,
What's that?
right? Like that's a rare thing nowadays. And I think it's something that people have to think about more than ever
Mhm.
because I was writing something recently about a similar thing, by the headline, "Refuse to become a human billboard," which is basically what we're talking about, like this kind of like grifter personas
Mhm.
that it's like, I don't even think you believe what you believe. I think
Right.
you're just saying it because it gets attention and traction and gets you on TV.
Right.
And the thing about that is that if you don't have a higher goal, then that's attractive.
Right.
If you don't know what to aim for and you suddenly are getting what feels good, it feels good to get this attention, to get noticed, people want to invite you on TV, to, give your crazy talking points or whatever it is, that might feel like success. But you got to think like, is that really going to feel good to me in 10 years?
Mhm.
Is that even going to last in 10 years? How does this develop? Do I even really care about this? For me, one of the things that is such a guiding principle is this interesting to me?
Yeah.
Is this interesting to me? And for me, figuring out the dynamics of collectivism and individualism and how we navigate a society where we can respect people's individual freedom while also working together cooperatively towards something better, That's fascinating.
Mhm.
So when I'm, tweeting about this or whatever, if it does well, love it. If it doesn't, I'm like, that's fine because I'm over here taking notes. Like these are notes to me.
Right.
Something that's always been interesting for me is I like to look back at my old social media posts, like go back way back and just be like, what was I on? And it's funny, I don't even want to tell people about this because they're gonna look through my old tweets and but the funny thing is that I really can't be too canceled for my old tweets because they're leftist tweets. So it's like only the leftists that really do the digging up your old tweets. So if they want to dig up my old tweets, they're just gonna be leftist and they'll be like, we can't cancel you for this. This is what we want you to believe. So they can cancel me for my current tweets. But I was looking at my super old tweets and I was like, these are all what I thought other people wanted me to say. These are all things that I thought like, it's not even that this was way early Twitter, right? So this isn't like, oh, I'm gonna make money, or I'm gonna become like super famous or whatever. It was just like very much groupthink type of things of like, this is how people in my space want me to sound. This is what they want me to talk about. So that's just like where my mind went. I was just gonna do this. I didn't know what to aim for beyond that. And that's the beauty of developing a real system of values. Like, what do I really care about? Do I care about truth? Do I care about knowledge, wisdom, self expression, creativity, love, whatever, all these things? Because if you can focus on the values that you care about, then everything else doesn't matter. You don't get wrapped up in these kind of like trends of, oh, everybody's debating whether we should give drug dealers the death penalty today. So I guess I gotta like believe this now. The people around me are saying that this is the thing. So now I've got to support this.
Right.
You don't have to get wrapped up in that. And that gives you that longevity that you're talking about. It's like those kind of values, when you're really grounded in something more deep than whatever is just interesting to the collective right now, whatever is just getting attention, that lasts forever. I mean, and I admire so much artists and thinkers that have that kind of rigorous, long career where you can look at all the books they've published or all the movies they've done or whatever it is. And it's like, this person was never doing stuff just because that's what they thought was going to be trendy or sell or that's what they thought other people wanted. They were going after their whims. They were going after their curiosity. They were trying to do something because they wanted to see if they could do it better. Things like that. That just is such a good guide rail for a fulfilling life also, not get wrapped up in these kind of things. I think that people now are having to confront what people in the media have had to deal with for decades, which is, do you want a long-term career? Do you want a long-term like identity? Do you want to develop a really holistic, deep sense of self? Or do you just want your big break? Because if you just want your big break where you get your 15 minutes of fame, then you might do it in a way that's embarrassing to you in a year,
Right.
or in a way that is very fleeting. And then that's it. You missed your chance because you could have actually brought something more useful and constructive to the world, but you were just chasing whatever is like popular at the time. And I think there's so many influences that push people to not focus on what am I actually interested in? What do I care about? I would love to see social media just be a place where people are more like, I'm studying leaves. I'm really interested in the shapes of leaves. Here's what I'm going to post. I love pottery. I'm going to share all the different pots that I like. Instead of just like, okay, what are we all arguing about today? Okay, we're all arguing about this one thing. Okay, let's go. Here's my take. There's something about letting your attention be dictated by the lowest common denominator that I feel is so, in a way, dehumanizing because it's like you're more interesting than that.
Yeah.
Like you're actually more interesting than the talking points of your political group or than reiterating your loyalty to some political group or to some ideology or some identity even. Like in the piece that you wrote for Black Sheep, I really loved it because there's this recurring theme of being told what you should be. If you're Black, you should dress like this. You should like music like this. You should talk like this. And it's just like, that is so boring. That is such a denial of the most beautiful thing about human beings, which is that we are all truly unique.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. And we just kind of gloss over that. Anyway, here's what everybody's going to say today. So let's all say the same thing. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
That's a denial of one of the most unique aspects of humanity.
No, I completely agree with you. We're nearing the end of this good conversation. So last time I asked you, and I usually ask people, "Are you optimistic about the future?" You
Mm.
answered that last time. So my new question is, how are you trying to impact the world?
Oh, that's so fascinating. Love that question. I want people to feel more free
Mhm.
to tread their own path. I want people to feel more free psychologically and physically in their world. I want you to just do things. Instead of this idea that I've got to get the government to do this program to help my community, or if I want to, see this more clean space in my neighborhood, I have to like just wish that it was that way. Go do it.
Mhm.
Something I did when I was younger, I remember, there was all this trash in one of the lakes nearby our house, and I just thought one day, I was like, "Let's go clean it up." And I went, it was just me and my sister, and we just cleaned it up, and it was so rewarding at the end to look and be like, "Oh my gosh, we did this, and it's beautiful." And I think that we need more empowerment as individuals to feel like we can actually impact the world around us
Yeah.
by just doing what we actually believe in. There's so much talk of people should be like this, we should have this, we should do this. Do it. Start.
Mhm.
So that is really what the black sheep is about. It's just stop waiting for the herd to go in the direction you want it to go.
Yeah.
Feel empowered to walk away and start forging your own path, because very often it's an individual that pushes the collective forward. It's an individual that says, this is what the future looks like. And then eventually the collective's like, that actually looks right. We should go over there instead.
Yeah.
And that's how change happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for myself, how I'm trying to impact the world is much in the same.
Mm.
I'm trying to be myself and encourage
Mm.
people to be themselves, to not be afraid to be themselves, to express themselves however which way you want to express yourself. Um, I think there's a lot of fear in doing so. Um, and it's still weird for me, like you understand, because I'm an IT guy. Like
Mm.
I'm not really supposed to be doing this type of stuff. But for the people who volunteer and tell me how much I helped them,
Yeah.
how much I impacted them, someone um, told me how I'm a mentor to them,
Mm.
and I was like, I was like, am I like,
That's
um,
amazing.
one guy told me my book changed his life,
Wow.
and I wasn't expecting that
That's
at all.
wonderful.
I someone made fun of me, not made fun of me, but they were laughing because I said, I would have been happy if 10 people bought the book and liked it,
Yeah.
because I didn't have any expectations.
Right.
It was more for me than anything else. Um, so I think that I'm trying to impact the world by showing that you don't have to be something that you're not,
Mm.
that have to you don't have to be this college educated, snooty,
Mhm.
such and such person to have a writing career, to get attention in the media. I don't have a college degree. I didn't take writing courses.
Mm.
I just wrote how I felt, and I got better and I did it more often. And I've become very fortunate to write for places like the New York
Mm.
Post frequently, basically every week at this point.
Mhm.
Um, to be that person that's on there, when I remember years ago, someone was like, "You should try and send some New York Post." I was like,
Mhm.
"New York Post?
Right.
What? They're not going to take what I'm saying." And here I am,
Mm.
and it's and to not take it for granted as well. That's the biggest advice I could tell someone.
Mm.
Like, don't take any of this for granted. Once it comes, don't take it for granted. I still go and get the newspaper clippings,
Mm.
for every article that I write for the New York Post, even though I've been writing every single week.
That's so nice.
So, I keep it. uh, I buy two pieces, so one for me and then one for my son.
Mm.
So he's probably not going to watch this, but he doesn't know that I'm collecting it for him
Oh.
as a legacy thing, so
Yeah.
he can see what his father has done, and maybe even read it and see the progression and how I've gotten better
Yeah.
in my writing. But I'm trying to impact the world. I'm trying to impact my son. I'm trying to do something that is positive for the world, because we have enough negative. There's
Mhm.
enough people out there who make money screaming all types of negative
Mhm.
bullshit. Um, I want to do something that actually helps people, that encourages conversation. That's why I'm doing Breaking Bread.
Yeah.
We're encouraging conversation. We're saying things that are counter narrative, maybe even for our own political
Mhm.
sphere.
Yeah.
We're saying things that are counter narrative to that, and I think that's really important to
Yeah.
to be normal.
It's so true though.
because so many people
It's
are
so
just
true.
not normal.
It's so
It's like,
true.
go outside, please go
Just be
outside.
normal. Just be free to be normal
Yeah,
and be human. You
yeah,
know, that's what I hear in what you're saying. And I think that's such a recurring theme that I notice in a lot of different political ideologies today and different trends and behavior. It's just this denial of the messy reality of being a human.
yeah,
You know, this idea that like, oh, you're offending people, or like you have to get in line with this new idea now because this is what it is. Da, da, da. And it's just like it's normal and human to doubt, to be different than the people around me, to make mistakes,
mhm,
you know, to be off color sometimes. And that rigidity, this idea that we have to curate ourselves constantly and be turning ourselves into these like brands or be perfect or be very loyal to our side or all these different things. Um, it's just so inhuman.
yeah,
It's so unreal. And then we wonder, you know, oh, why is society going in this direction? Why does our culture feel like this? It's because we have an inhuman culture, a culture that does not allow for the reality of what it is to be human. And it's so interesting because in some ways I hear, you know, there's this religious revival. In some ways, like I see it on the right a little bit, this idea
yeah,
of like, oh, we need to go back to Christianity. And I don't know, I get it, but also you could just do these principles now because I don't see anybody embodying forgiveness, kindness, you know, this kind of like openness, acceptingness, grace. Recently, I was just thinking, like, what even is grace? What is
mhm,
this idea? And I had a lot of people respond, like, well, grace is when you are kind and you don't worsen someone's pain or in a situation like that they've made a mistake in. You know, it's kind of
yeah,
like you help them get out of a difficult situation. I was like, "Oh, no wonder I never see that because everything that I see is the minute someone trips, jump on them and kick them while they're down.
right,
You know, use them as an example of what's wrong with society."
right, drag 'em.
Right, exactly, and it's like, that's the opposite of grace, you know, so I see these needs for those kinda, like, religious principles in some ways, and that is what I think you're saying
Yeah,
very much, you know, is this idea of, like, let's be more human, and that is beautiful because I believe that humanity is beautiful, there's so many beautiful things about being human, and more our culture focuses on the negatives and the problems, but we should balance that with the beauty, and the gratitude is definitely one of those things, you know?
absolutely.
I love just waking up sometimes and being like, love being around my plants, love having clean running water, you
Mhm,
know, air conditioning, heater, just these simple things. And that can ground you in something that from there, the next thing you do, you're just a little more grounded in reality. You know, you don't get sucked up into that crazy algorithm induced mania where it's like, how can I be extreme and unpleasant for attention or, you know, hostile?
mhm.
Just be human. That's the new motto, be human.
Be human. Yeah, yeah. I'm always grateful because of all the experiences that I've had. You know, being broke, homeless, all
Mhm.
this other stuff. I'm extremely
Mm.
happy with everything. Like my car, it got. I guess it's almost been 2 years ago. I love that car. It's a great car, and I when I drive it, I enjoy it for a different reason.
Yeah.
I enjoy it because I've had shitty cars.
Right.
I've had cars where I'm like, oh, I gotta get another job.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
the alternator's gone. I've been
Oh.
abandoned on the road. Like I've been through all that stuff.
Oh my
And I'm just
god.
so grateful that I'm not there. But I'm also grateful that I went through that.
Right.
So, I think gratitude in being appreciative of what you have, not necessarily what you don't have.
Mhm.
There's too much of that.
Oh, for
Oh, I'm
sure.
supposed to have this.
Yeah.
I deserve this. I've written
Mm.
articles about you don't deserve shit,
Yeah.
right? You deserve what you earn.
Yeah.
And I didn't earn it,
Yeah.
right? I deserve to have a broken down car because I didn't earn
Mm.
to have what I have now. So I think that there needs to be a lot more gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Absolutely.
this has been great.
Yeah, it has.
I'm glad we got together again for part two. Part
Yeah.
two.
That's right. Yeah, we had to.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me in your house.
Oh,
And
yeah.
obviously we'll work together again.
I would love that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. It was awesome. I can't wait to watch it back. I always love to watch back my interviews because I'm like, oh, that was such a good point from you and me, and I want to
I'm
write
the
about that.
opposite.
Really?
I don't watch back myself.
Oh my gosh, I love
That's
doing
why
it.
editing my stuff is like it's been a curve of like I gotta listen to myself.
Yeah.
I'm usually like I did this thing, watch it. all
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Don't, but I'm not gonna watch it though. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But,
so funny.
Yeah, thank you again. I'm sure we'll get together.
Yeah.